Hi, I'm here with a review for From the Ashes by Jessie Thistle, and I'm going to be reviewing this in two ways. So the first half of this video is going to be a traditional review, and the second half will be a review of the book in regards to Canada Reads for this year, 2020. So let's hop right in. So this is an autobiography written by Jessie Thistle, and it will be defended by George Canyon. So Jesse is a Métis man who had a rough childhood. He was abandoned by his parents as a toddler, raised by his clueless grandparents. He fell into a bad addiction with hard drugs that left him homeless for a large chunk of his adult life. So for me, there's three things that I look for in a good book: writing, character development, and themes. So let's talk about that. In regards to the writing, I actually found myself really sucked into the story. The chapters are like long vignettes, each containing a distinct story, but connected with an overall theme and an overall style. He has this thing though where he doesn't finish stories completely. There are stories in the beginning that did not really feel complete, as they reached this climax but had no real follow-through, no real consequences. However, it was also really astounding to find out that Jesse had been functionally illiterate, and that he was able to overcome that and write so well in this book. In regards to characters, again, we're talking about real-life people as opposed to fictional characters, but I still just call them characters. I could not stand Jesse's grandparents, especially his grandfather, and I felt like Jesse was very careful not to directly criticize them, but their actions, I think, spoke for themselves. So not only did his grandparents raise one son to be an addict who abuses his wife and sons and then abandons them as toddlers, but they also didn't learn from that experience, and they went about in the same manner to raise their grandsons. His grandfather beat him. He expected them to work without, spending any real quality time with them. And the grandmother was often la la land, just ignoring everything that's going on around her. And it got me so angry that the grandparents were failing again, that they didn't learn from things. And it was also frustrating that Jesse wasn't able to criticize them and say anything really negative about them. In regards to the themes, the big one here is addiction and homelessness, which oftentimes go hand in hand, especially in Indigenous populations. And it definitely throws them in your face. It is a very intense look at these issues. And Jesse doesn't shy away from showing the things he was willing to do and the things that happened to him as a consequence of those actions. These are things that the average person wouldn't think about doing, like what it feels like to starve, or purposely going to jail to receive health care, or climbing alongside of a building. One of the standout features of this book was how intense it was. The plot wasn't always very action-packed, but I felt the anxiety and suspense throughout his stories, especially in the second half of the book. It really gives a look at how people end up homeless and addicted. One of the negative features of the book is that I wish Jesse had been a little more critical of the people in his life instead of just himself. I can see why he maybe pandered to his family a little to avoid conflict. I didn't feel like it was a true examination of his own life without examining the role that others played in that life for him. So I'm going to share a quote, and this actually happens in the very beginning of the book, and I loved how it set the tone for the book. Mom used to think I was mute, but I could speak fine. I just chose not to. My words belonged to me. They were the only thing I had that were mine, and I didn't trust anyone enough to share them. And it just shows that evolution of how he's now sharing all these words with us, his story, himself with us. And I think that's really interesting. So now I'm going to talk about the book in regards to Canada Reads this year. So does this book fit within the theme? The theme for Canada Reads this year is a book to bring Canada into focus. And I believe this book does that really well with the focus on homelessness and the effects of addiction and the effects on both spiritual, mental, and physical health. And the intensity of it made it feel more focused and real. Do I think this is a book that all Canadians can or should read? I think this addresses important issues, but I don't know if every Canadian would be receptive to it because of their own prejudices. Not just against the Indigenous population, but also against homelessness and addiction in general. I also think that the realness and the graphic nature of his descriptions may turn off some readers. But this book is important and it should be read for precisely those reasons, because it shoves homelessness in your face and you can't look away or ignore it while you're reading. What do I think about the person defending this book? So George Canyon, I don't know much about him. I did look him up on YouTube because he is a country music artist. I'm just gonna admit that I do not like country music at all. And some of his music is very country. I do also question that he was running for the Conservative Party in 2019 under Andrew Scheer, Andrew Scheer didn't even publish a policy on homelessness for that election. I tried looking up, all this stuff, and while George Canyon does have a focus on homelessness, I question what he thinks that, the Conservative Party can actually do that other parties would probably be better at doing. So that's an interesting political aside there. Where in the competition do I see this book placing? I can actually see this book being voted out early because of its intensity and how it would threaten other books. So say if the person defending Son of a Trickster is voting strategically, I think she'd vote this book off because they share a lot of similar themes. And I don't think this book will win because of the trend of Indigenous books not winning, but I wouldn't be disappointed if it did.